taste of just pure beer. Beer, cold, crisp, no preservatives. Clean, crisp taste that says beer.
What's up, everyone? Welcome to the first episode of NABeerReviews. My name is Ian, and I'm your host, and today we are reviewing Clausthaler Dry Hopped non-alcoholic beer. All right, so here we are at Clausthaler's website. They're doing a great job of branding and marketing. I love the design. It's a really easy website to navigate through. Really bright, great media, and well written as well. The information's interesting. You can find out about the history of the company, where it started back in the 60s and 70s. And you can see here that they came up with a radically innovative brewing process in which the brew's fermentation was stopped just before the alcohol began to develop. So it stopped before the alcohol began to develop. I'm not sure if they mean that the process started, so there's 0.5% alcohol in the beer, so maybe fermentation begins and then they cold crash it, or they add something to the beer to chemically stop the fermentation process. The details aren't clear, but it's a delicious beer, so whatever they're doing, it's patented and it works. I would love to know more. I did write them an email asking for more details, but I understand if they want to keep that to themselves. There's a really cool story about how when they first hit the market back in 79, there was resistance to non-alcoholic beer, and they were the first on the scene in Germany. So they used this tactic of branding themselves as a light alcoholic beer called Princeton beer, and marketed that to bars, and it seems like bars were pretty excited about it and on board with this hip new beer, only to discover that really it was Clausthaler. And they've been doing it ever since. Now, it seems like they've really kind of exploded here recently, and we can see that they're distributing all over the world at this point. Here's a infographic showing their distribution. You can see most of the Americas are covered, most of Europe, Australia, South Africa, and parts of Asia as well. That's really good. 51 countries and counting. Here's their lineup. We've got the Clausthaler Original, which are these two. I believe these are the same beer. They just needed to complete the pyramid here. And then we have the dry hopped version with Cascade hops. It's unfiltered. And then we have the unfiltered version, which is also dry hopped with Cascade hops. And I have not seen this here locally, so I don't know what the difference between the Clausthaler dry hopped and the Clausthaler unfiltered is. I would love to get my hands on this and do a side by side with the dry hopped, because they both are unfiltered and they're both dry hopped with Cascade hops. And I'd love to know specifically what the difference is between those two beers. And then they have their sort of novelty beer over here, which is the lemon, and it is a combination of lemonade and their non-alcoholic original beer. They also sell them in cans, tall boys. We don't have those here. At least I haven't seen them. And then these are the 6-packs that we do have here in the market. Again, I've never seen the lemon, but it would be great to get it. They sell cases, flats. Again, we don't have those here. There's a really cool little video that you can watch following their history. And of course, they have their contact info. Like I said, I wrote them an email. I'm hoping to hear back. I'd love to know more about their company, who they're distributing through here in the US, and if they have any plans to release any new products. So this is Clausthaler. It's time to get tasting. So let's go ahead and taste their beer. A little history about Clausthaler NA. I discovered this beer about 2 years ago. It is a dry hopped beer, dry hopped with Cascade hops. It's unfiltered. It comes in at about 20 grams of carbs and 1.1 grams of protein and just 89 calories. So not bad, as we'll get into, for the amount of flavor that you get in this beer. It's pretty guilt-free. All right, so when I stopped drinking, it was pretty hard because I love hops, I love IPAs, and
in the summertime when the Northwest gets pretty warm and we're out on the water, we're playing up in the mountains, I started craving IPAs. And I would have these phantom flavors of floral, piney, citrusy hops dancing through my mouth all summer long, and I'd have nothing to do for it. Then somebody recommended this beer, and my life has been much more fulfilled ever since. So let's go ahead and open it up and see how it pours. It's a light amber color, fairly translucent, almost a light brown, about 2 fingers of head on there. It's holding up pretty well. Good amount of carbonation. And I can already see some lacing beginning to form as the head settles. Pretty hazy. Yeah, I'd call it sort of a caramel color. A little more yellow where the light's shining through on the bottom. All right, let's see how this bad boy smells. Well, the first thing I notice is a definite hop presence. We'll call it a piney, slightly floral hop notes. Interestingly, the Clausthaler website describes the beer as more of a citrusy hoppy beer, but I'm not getting that much citrus. I'm definitely getting pininess from the Cascade hops. There is a tea-like scent, sort of an earthy aroma to the beer. I did read some other reviews online and people were talking about a chemical smell. I don't get that at all. But yeah, there's a bit of an earthy tea aroma from the maltiness. And a slight, very, very slight alcohol smell, but it's not prominent. Now let's give it a taste. So right off the bat, you get a hit of hoppiness, which is really balanced with a malty body. Definitely piney, floral hop notes. There is quite a bit of residual sweetness, and I noticed that as the beer warms up, you get a little bit more of that malty sweetness that's pretty common in non-alcoholic beers. Right out of the fridge, it's more muted. Generally, you want to taste a beer, if you're judging a beer, not ice cold, because the flavors will be muted. But I find in non-alcoholic beers, sometimes it's preferential to taste the beer ice cold, because you don't necessarily want those off esters and the residual sweetness and strange flavors that come out in a sweeter non-alcoholic beer to be present. Sometimes you want those flavors muted, and what you end up with is a cleaner, crisper tasting beer. So I definitely recommend tasting and drinking Clausthaler ice cold right out of the fridge. That being said, it does have a nice amount of astringency from the small amount of alcohol present, so it's 0.5%, and that really balances nicely with the moderate to low amount of body from the malt and the crisp effervescence of the carbonation, which really brings out the hoppiness. Pretty tasty beer. Let's talk about the mouthfeel. I would say this beer has a low to medium mouthfeel. It's not really watery. It's actually pretty full. The crispness, again, of the effervescence of the carbonation really lightens it. So it doesn't have a heavy, full-bodied ale feel. Even though the color is pretty dark, it still tastes like a light beer. And it's actually described on the website as a lager, even though the overall profile of the beer, to me, tastes more like an India Pale Ale. The hoppiness really sort of overwhelms a lot of the other flavors of a non-alcoholic beer that you might not really enjoy. And I think that that's one thing that Clausthaler's done really well. You almost don't realize that it's a non-alcoholic beer, the way that they've balanced the carbonation, the hoppiness, the body from the malt, and the crispness of the carbonation.
Beer, cold, crisp,